Our search led us to John Adams, a man who knows the so-called dark corners of Victoria better than anyone.
The boy came back the next night. He gave her a jar of poison and told her to kill Yip Tang, but she wouldn't do that. And she told Chan to get lost in no uncertain terms. And that night he came down with his cleaver, and while she was leaning out the window, he brought the cleaver down and chopped her head off, and then he ran. For all he was worth, he needed a place to hide or escape. He found the entrance to Fantan Alley, the gambling alley. He knew the way in. He'd been there many times before, and in he ran. But suddenly a group of 20 men came out of one of the gambling dens.
I'm John Adams,
They blocked the way.
and I'm a historian in Victoria, and I run a company called Walking Tours by Discover the Past. We do, as the name suggests, mostly walking tours. History tours by day and ghostly walks by night is our mantra, but we also do a lot of historical research. We do lectures and presentations and many other things of that sort. We also write books.
A tour with John takes you through the heart of downtown, accompanied by chilling stories of murder, madness, and the paranormal narrated by John and his son, Chris. As a historian, he knows all about the history of the city.
Victoria's Chinatown has a fascinating history. It is undisputably the oldest urban Chinatown in Canada. There were many other communities as well, but Victoria was the first major urban centre because up until 1886, when Vancouver became the terminus of the Canadian Pacific Railway, Victoria was the only major port of entry, which surprises people these days. So everybody coming in to the fledgling colony, the Gold Rush colony after 1858, came to Victoria. And many people stayed. And of course, people were coming to get rich, at least to make some money. And the Chinese wanted to get rich and make some money along with everybody else. And so they came. And although some went to the goldfields, for sure, and some stayed in the goldfields, many decided to stay here and open warehouses or stores and provide other services for the miners that were coming and going through Victoria, because they didn't come to stay. Many of them were actually planning to go back to China, and some did. And so Victoria was a two-way street, the entrance and also the exit for people coming to Canada. And certainly that was the case for people from China.
As a tour guide, he's heard some of the town's strangest legends, and John knows how to thread the facts with the fairy tales to create a truly terrifying experience.
He ran to the place where he worked, but he was captured there 2 days later. He hanged himself in his jail cell. His ghost came back to the place where he was captured. But his ghost is still haunting Fantan Alley, retracing his escape. People coming through see him, the shadowy form of the boy, running toward them, and then suddenly they feel themselves being pushed up against the wall. And then everything is returned to normal. Fantan Alley, the heart of Chinatown, and one of the most haunted places in Victoria.
Whether the ghost stories are true, no one can say for sure. But it is true that Victoria's downtown was no stranger to dark dealing. Chinatown was once host to many illegal dealings, including gambling, prostitution, and one of the largest opium operations in North America. Since it was once a common spot for police raids, Chinatown's famous Fantan Alley has built up a number of stories over the years and earned a stop on Adam's ghost tour.
It wasn't just in Chinatown. There were gambling dens in other parts of town as well. But perhaps because the Chinese gambling dens were around the back and upstairs and seemed to be hidden away, maybe it just helped heighten the imaginations of non-Chinese who saw these things or heard about them. They did exist, for sure, and it was a major activity in Chinatown. Gambling, of course, was not legal. Mm-hmm. But the police would occasionally raid the gambling dens, and it seems that the police weren't always trying very hard. But once in a while, the mayor and council would have a moral crackdown, and the police would be sent in. But according to some of the old-timers who ran these gambling dens in the 1920s and 30s, they're the ones I've been able to talk to, it seems that the gambling den owners had a good relationship with the police and sometimes had bribed them, and the police had notified them in advance that they were coming anyway. Right. And probably they took their time with axes and sledgehammers breaking their way in while the gamblers were heading out the back. Mm-hmm. So that sort of thing was very real. That's not made up.
But Adams did draw a line when it came to fact and fiction, as one of the most common questions he gets on his ghost tours are about Victoria's secret network of underground tunnels beneath Chinatown.
There's always been a rumor of underground passages in Chinatown, here in Victoria, but also in many other cities as well where there are Chinatowns. And I moved to Victoria in 1960. I was 11 at that point, and we lived close to downtown. And my friends and I spent a huge amount of time looking for the secret tunnels. It was sort of something to do on a weekend, and we roamed around looking for the secret tunnels. Why? I don't know. I guess it was kind of exciting.
Mm-hmm. Accounts vary according to who you ask, but the popular belief is that Chinese businesses used to build hidden underground tunnels that would allow gamblers, prostitutes, and opium dealers to disappear when the police came knocking. Atop of its controversial crime history, many tourists still come to Victoria to seek out these mysterious passageways. But decades of searching in Victoria has revealed nothing resembling an underground network outside of a few small storm drains. And given the fact that some of Victoria's police were accomplices to criminals downtown, Adams thinks that the famous Fantan Alley Disappearing Act might just have been a cover for crooked cops.
So if you look at the police records, I decided once and for all, okay, I've got to get to the bottom of this. If there were secret tunnels, the police would have known where they were because they raided the gambling dens. Well, all the police records in the police archives, and it's really a wonderful resource here in Victoria, all the records talk about the police going upstairs, past barricaded doors with axes and sledgehammers to break the doors down, or on occasion to a room at the back of a building at street level, but there's not one single reference to them going downstairs underground. And if you think about it, if there was a basement and the police arrived, everybody would be trapped in those rooms. It was much easier to have a room upstairs where they could get out the back windows or down the fire escapes into the series of alleys behind. And so people always ask about the secret tunnels, so I'm not surprised that you have asked about them, but I really have come to conclude they're not there.
It seems that Victoria's underground was more likely above ground.
If you go to Chinatown and look at any building excavation, it's mostly solid rock underneath. And although a few buildings after 1900 were built with basements,